what we're going to talk about now is qualifications. So qualifications, when we did our review, a number of things happened. Once when we started, we found that a number of qualifications didn't have national applicability, and so they may be removed from the training package. The other thing we found is that a lot of qualifications may have had a very similar core, and so they became merged. We had to make sure that qualifications also aligned with AQF, and so certain ones are being removed from our training packages because they really should be in higher education. Because when we were doing the review, people wanted more and more content, and that content pushed them up out of the training, out of vocational education. Okay? All qualifications have to have a vocational outcome. There's lots of people contact us all the time and go, I think you should have a qualification or a course in whatever. And yeah, it may be lovely to have, certain types of therapies, connected to crystals or whatever, but they may not have national applicability, so that's why they're not necessarily in the training package. Other things that we found is what we've done is we've reduced restrictive packaging rules. So we've tried to have the base core elements and then a lot of flexibility in the electives. And also what we've done is, even though when you look at a qualification, you'll see it often says, these are the core, and then it'll have some other thing about, must choose so many from the list below. And then sometimes it'll have different things. Some will say, can choose outside the, anywhere in the entire training package or accredited course, or it must be between, the CHC and HLT training packages. So there's trying to give as much flexibility to workplaces and RTOs as possible, and learners. What we've done is we're trying to make sure that there is multi-skilling in there, so people can move around and change careers if they want. So for example, in fact, is like the Certificate 3 in Individual Support. That is an entry-level qualification, and it's for people either who have never done vocational education before, or they've heard, as they go to a careers fair and they hear that community and direct client care are the biggest growing industries. They want to enter into that field, so they want to do something. The reason it's like you have options in that particular packaging rules. In the packaging rules of that qualification, people can actually enter and just do what is, the Certificate 3 in Individual Support. They could choose a suite of electives across that field. And because they may have never actually worked with an older person or a person with disability, and they want to experience all of those areas before they decide what career they want to have. It also means that they can choose if they want. They know they want to work with older people. So they can specialise if they so desire. And if they desire later to actually specialise, they have that options, and they do that via skill sets, and we'll talk about that. So if you look at the example that's on page 18, we have the example of individual support, and what you'll see is a couple of changes. One, with all of our qualifications, not with all of the qualifications, most of our qualifications have removed entry requirements. There isn't prerequisite qualifications to get into a qualification. We've done this because some people know that that's where they want to work at a certain level, so they have that option. They don't have to go through the steps. Or they can if they want to. They can go to a lower qual and go to a higher one. So what you'll see here is the entry requirements have been removed. There's none. You'll have the core units, and the units don't have that, what people used to call the AQF. They're not there anymore. And you have the packaging rules, and you'll have the different specialisations within it, and other electives that people can choose. And really, it's about what employers want, it's about what RTOs can deliver, and it's about what the trainee and learner wants to learn. They have the options. Now, just because we have removed entry requirements doesn't mean that anyone can enter into a qualification. It does mean, as an RTO, it is still your responsibility to make sure they are able to complete that qualification. So, for example, if they were going to do anything with children or early childhood education and care, in their work placement, they will have to get a working with children check. If someone can't get a working with children check, they cannot work in those centres, they cannot complete this qualification. It isn't listed specifically on the qualification because it's different. Working with children requirements are different state to state. So you have to make sure it marries up to the legislation within the state it's delivered. Also, the LLN requirements of learners has to be addressed. If someone can't complete, they need to have that either addressed via building in LLN electives, or they can go to the foundation skills training package and either do some of the units or a qualification there. And we'll talk about that later. The biggest thing with the changes to these qualifications is making sure there's collaboration with industry. What RTOs deliver, they should be talking to industry in their area where either they're training the workers or they're going to be supplying the workers to making sure that the qualification that gets delivered suits what those employers want. For example, when you call the ISC, you actually kind of get us on the phone. We don't have a call centre that takes messages for us or anything. And so we get a lot of the first complaints, like you complain directly to us. And one of them had an RTO recently that said employers won't hire someone with just the individual support. Now, that is the policy of that organisation. There is no mandated qualification to work in aged care or community care areas. You know, early childhood education and care, yep, you must have a qualification or working towards it to get the job. It's a policy that's legal and legislative, but there isn't with the other industries. It's actually organisation policies. So in that case, it's the RTO working with the employer to make them understand what the qualification is. And we've done we do public consultation, and you know, employers can get all of our information. They could have turned up today, they can register, so they can know about it. But it's also for them to understand what the qualification is. But if they say that we will only take workers that have Certificate 3 in Individual Support bracket ageing, then that is what the RTO should be trying to deliver. So it's working with them to making sure that the workers are getting what skills they need and the employers are getting the workers that they need. The other thing I did forget to mention, I'm sorry, with the qualifications that don't have entry requirements anymore, that used to have, like for the diploma, the Cert 4 to diploma or the Cert 3 to the Cert 4 to diploma. If people enter into that diploma, the skills that they needed that they would have got through that pathway are built into that diploma. They are built into the core. So they still will have those skills. They're not missing anything by not doing that path. And so if anyone comes and has the Cert 4 and now wants to do the diploma, they have the option to do it. It just means the RTOs have to do a mapping in RPLs. And credit transfers depending on what they need. You can be rest assured that even though those entry requirements are now gone, the skills aren't lost and the workers still come out with that quality of work. So the question's about clarifying industry collaboration. It can be working with the people that are going to take the students for placement. And what you can do in that, when you're doing that collaboration, finding out what they will accept, they will allow trainees, students to do. So before we had the question about early childhood education and care. Now in that particular instance, you know, we have massive amounts of public consultation around the development of those qualification and units, and we had some of the biggest providers in Australia. They wanted trainees to do what they did. That's why it's in there. But with the disability area, that you can be prepared. If that is not actually has to be assessed in the workplace, you can then prepare for what can't be assessed in the workplace. You can prepare for what you're going to do in simulation, so that you can get that collaboration as well. So it doesn't have to be necessarily the big employers. The people you're talking about will probably be sole traders, but you can talk to the people, the schools or the companies where they actually go to do placement and have the collaboration that way. So it's actually reflecting the industry, because it also could be, aromatherapy goes into an aged care home, for example. The other thing that the collaboration with the RTOs and workforce is about making sure they understand why the trainee is there, or the student is there, and what they can do, what they can't do, what you plan to do. So they need to know what they're going to be undertaking. So things like when you're planning for on-site assessment, making sure that they understand you're going to do that, when, and making sure that that doesn't interrupt their actual work, and sort of working with them on that. Maintaining the relationship between the RTO and the employer. A lot of these, like, we have a lot of, the longest one that this has been happening with is this early childhood education and care, and some RTOs are going, can we put 10 people in this room? It's like, well, it depends on, one, child ratios. You've got to look at safety, and there's no point having 10 trainees in a room with 5 babies, because they're not going to get the quality of work placement that they need. There's probably going to also be way too many people trying to do stuff with those kids. So you've got to look at, be reasonable about it. And explain assessment procedures and what you would like them to do. If you are getting, things signed off like workbooks and all of that, making sure that they understand and they're willing to do that. Because all of that evidence, it's all about the quality of evidence. And the better relationship you have with them, the better it is all going to be. Some of the other biggest complaints we get is, people in the aged care sector, where people were turning up and had never met an old person apart from their family members, and they really wanted, they would happily take placement, but they weren't getting asked because RTOs were just simulating everything. But it was actually causing a detriment, because then people wouldn't get employed with those qualifications in that area. So it's trying to build that relationship. And most people, they want the quality of workers, so they're willing to do it, as long as the relationship is good. And making sure that the boundaries that the RTO sets, the employer sets, is met. Because it could be a whole multiple of different things. There could be religious reasons in there, it could be who they want, what their policies are. So it needs to match with those as well. So the industry expectations, making sure that it's holistic, making sure that what skills they're going to do and develop are defined, how best to work that into, because some people may do, a week placement, others may do a day, a week for months. So it's what works best for both trainee and the workplace. Making sure it's customised and flexible. The really great thing about vocational education is that it should be adapted to make sure it fits the trainee and the workplace. It's not like university where it's this and that's it, and you sit this exam, pass or fail. We're there to actually help people get these skills and improve our workforce.